My name is John Clifford. I'm a senior fellow and the Agile Practices Lead at Construx Software. Today I want to talk about my 7 steps to project success. And I want to focus on step 2 for this lecture. In a domain of high uncertainty, accurate estimates can only be made on effort for deliverables, not duration for activities. So what does this mean? It means we need to estimate effort, not duration. A key rule of estimation is to estimate effort and then derive duration. Why is this so important in software projects? Well, software projects are projects generally in domains of high uncertainty. Software development is a stochastic activity. The same requirements can result in different implementations, of which many are acceptable. Task breakdowns to the atomic level can be done in numerous ways, some that are equally valid. The same task can occur over different durations, even if the same people are doing the same types of work. And of course, different individuals with comparable attributes in terms of skill, knowledge, experience won't produce the same outcomes in the same minimal time frames. And so when you combine all that, we find out that uncertainty doesn't cancel, it compounds. The effective variance across all the activities in your project with dependencies is cumulative, not diminishing. That variance doesn't cancel itself out, it accumulates. When we buffer activity duration estimates in an attempt to mitigate that variance, we actually increase the variance. So when you add time to a task duration in an attempt to buffer uncertainty, you only increase the variance, which of course increases uncertainty. And the single largest category of waste across projects where we spend most of our time is waiting time, not working time. So let's talk about why we even estimate. What is an estimate? An estimate, according to the dictionary, is an approximate calculation or judgment of the value, number, quantity, or extent of something. That's led people in this industry to say that actually an estimate is the most optimistic prediction that has a non-zero probability of becoming true. And so therefore we tend to think of accurate estimate as an oxymoron in this industry, but that's far from the truth. So why do we estimate? We estimate in order to help us achieve predictability. If I went to most organization leaders and said, if I could give you one thing from your training and consulting, what would it be? They tell us predictability. They want to know how long something's going to take, how much it's going to cost, what they're going to get, and to what level of quality. Because organizations believe that estimation is key to predictability, and it is, they spend a lot of time, perhaps too much time and effort estimating. Not because estimation isn't worthwhile, but because they're trying to identify and estimate detailed tasks that can't be known up front in domains of high complexity, instead of identifying and sizing deliverables, something that can be known. The result is, in the desire for predictability, organizations often value being precisely wrong over being approximately right. So how do we estimate effort and not duration? Well, in the Agile world, we've solidified around the concept of story points. So what is a story point? It's a measure of relative size, effort, or complexity. All those factors combine to give us an effort estimate. What story points aren't? They're not a measurement of duration. They map to duration, but they're not a direct measurement of duration. Something else story points don't reflect. They don't reflect uncertainty. We'll handle uncertainty with velocity, which we'll talk about later in this lecture series. Now, because story points are arbitrary in terms of the numbers only bear relationship in terms of each other, that's why it's a relative form of estimation, we use arbitrary numbers to reflect this and reflect that we're being imprecise by intention. It's become very popular and a best practice in the Agile world to use the full Fibonacci series of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so forth and so on. What's nice about this is we have a built-in range with the Fibonacci series of about 2.6 to 1, the golden mean. And that helps us cover a lot of estimation issues by using the law of large numbers. Now, why story points? Because it's far easier and more accurate to estimate size in terms of effort than duration, for the reasons we've talked about a little bit earlier. Duration also relates to the person actually doing the work, effort is not. So I can go out next to a world-class runner and we can look at a mile, and we can both agree that that is a mile. But when you ask us how long will it take to run it, I might say 8 minutes. With that world-class mile, I might say 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Who's right and who's wrong? The time will depend upon the person running that mile, but a mile is still the mile. So think of effort as akin to distance, whereas duration is the time it takes a person or a team to cover that distance. And of course, that depends upon that person or team's skill, ability, the environment, or so forth. It's much harder to run a mile if you're running in sand or through a swamp than if you're running on a nice level track. Something else about effort versus duration. Teams can improve the rate at which items can be implemented, but they can't add more than 24 hours in a day, at least not on planet Earth. And because story points are imprecise by their very nature, it keeps us from spending more time trying to unnecessarily refine estimates. So we realize that accurate is good enough. We don't have to be precise. Things to be mindful of when we're estimating effort on deliverables rather than duration on activities is that effort estimate includes getting that deliverable to done, not to coded, not to tested, to done. And done means potentially shippable state. So in other words, we may not be able to deploy that code to a customer because there isn't sufficient additional code to make it fully functional, but we'll never have to go back and touch that functionality again before we do ship. It is done. Your organization, therefore, must have an agreed upon defined definition of done. And this helps you keep from letting defects accumulate. Defects are not included in effort estimates. They just rob bandwidth. So we have to realize that defects on our current work aren't additional deliverables. They're rework on the deliverables we already were supposed to have implemented. So we get no credit in terms of story points for defects. And therefore, there's no point in estimating defects either. Think about it. If you have to fix a defect, does it matter how long it's going to take? And if you don't have to fix a defect, does it matter how long it's going to take?